Are you here? You're either here or you're not here. There's no try. Welcome to the Paul Leslie Hour, episode number 1067. Finances, wow, that can be a tough topic. But today's guest, Thomas Perez, is here to share his expertise. Based in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, Tom's an open book, and he joined Paul for a waterfront chat. Come on, let's dive in.
Well, I'm here with my friend Thomas Perez, financial advisor. Tom, thank you so much for spending a few minutes talking to me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Well, I think something that everyone could learn more about
Okay.
is finance.
Me too.
You're a financial advisor. Can just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
About me. Well, you said I'm a financial advisor. I have my practice at Northwestern Mutual, and I do a little bit of business financial planning, buy-sell arrangements and 401k plans, tax shelters for business owners, and then about the other half of my business is personal financial plans, wealth management, retirement planning, college savings, et cetera, those kind of things. I'm also a military veteran, did 28 years between the active and reserves in the Navy. I was in Afghanistan on a submarine, did a lot of cool stuff like that. And my wife and I have like a little public speaking business on the side that we do. My wife's Ulas, she's from India. There's Tom Ulas, our first names sandwiched together. LLC, we have a website. So we do like motivational speaking, public speaking on living a lifestyle of abundance. And we have 2 little girls, 14 and 9. I think that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's us.
So is it Thomas or Tom?
Great question. So it's both. I guess I'm Thomas Perez is my God-given name, but I went by Tom for a long time in high school. Growing up, I was Tommy, and I thought that sounded like a kid. So I started going by Tom when I got to high school, and I was Tom. And then 2017, I decided to run for Congress, South Carolina's first congressional district. And I was Tom Perez for Congress, and I just kind of started going under the radar. I had to file the FEC to raise money, there's a whole lot of minutia there. And I set up a website and a Facebook page to direct people to donate. Meanwhile, Tom Perez, former Secretary of Labor under Barack Obama, was running for the DNC chair position. And we got confused.
Okay.
So I would get a lot of his hate mail. Apparently, he really ticked off some Bernie Sanders supporters.
Okay.
So that's Bernie people training their guns on me. And I had asked my campaign manager, I was surprised anyone knew I was even running, because I just really was just calling my closest friends and I want to make a big pop at one point. But anyway, so I was like, my campaign manager, a guy named John Lebecki, I said, what did I say about Bernie Sanders? And he said, nothing. They think you're the other guy. And I'm like, who's that? So long story short, so I changed everything to Thomas Perez to just try to differentiate myself. Social media, website, everything. And then 6 months later, I got recalled to active duty and shipped out to Afghanistan, which killed my campaign. But I didn't want to change everything back. So I'm still professionally and everywhere else is Thomas Perez. If you're like, hey, what's your name? I'll say Tom.
Okay.
That's the long story.
Thomas by day, Tom by night.
Exactly. Well, I like that. I'm going to use that. That's good.
So what do you think are maybe a couple of the misconceptions that people have about finance?
It's a good question. It probably depends on who you're talking to. One of the most common ones is that I see is I can do that later, or my income will never run out. People don't necessarily consciously think that, but they'll get into their 40s and realize that they haven't really put anything aside. And they think, well, I don't want to retire. I'm just going to work till I die. Well, retirement may happen to you, right? You may be, aged out of employment or what have you. So that's one. People kind of wait too long. And the best way to build wealth is just early and often. Just start with as early as you can, with whatever you can, to start putting some money aside. I mean, the GP number is 20%, but the earlier you start, the more often, the sooner you build wealth. The other misconception is probably that of trying to time the market and trying to say, well, if I like right now, the market's been pretty volatile. So someone says, well, I took money out of the market until it settles out. That's going to do more harm than good. And over a 15-year time horizon, going back to 1920s, we've never seen a market downturn over a 15-year. We've always had positive returns when you look at 15 years. And even broken down to 5-year increments, we've had a positive market 87% of the time. So the people that have timed the market successfully are so few in number. We write books about them and make movies about them. And so it's really, really hard to do. So the best thing is just kind of just early and often, consistency. And like one of my old CEOs told me one time, there's only 2 things you need to build wealth. That's time and money. Even a little bit of money over time will build wealth. Obviously, the more money, the less time it takes to build the wealth. I mean, anyone can just open an account and start contributing. You don't need to pay a financial professional. There's many platforms out there. Because I'm at Northwestern Mutual, I'm not allowed to recommend any, but there's plenty do-it-yourself platforms that you could go out and just, again, early and often and start contributing. I would say the longer timeline you have, basically, the more aggressive you could be with it. Because you have such a long time. You can put your money into an S&P 500 index fund, 20s, and just keep contributing to it. Anyone can do that. Anyone can open bank accounts to start contributing to it. Just things that you don't need. When you start getting into larger income levels and you start having children and starting businesses, that's when you might want to engage with a financial professional. Doesn't mean that you can't call somebody. I've always told myself I will never turn away, even if it's someone, 25-year-old kid who just needs some good advice. I wish I would have had that. So by all means, call me if you have a question. But there's a lot of things that you can just do on your own. You don't need any professional. And a lot of these do-it-yourself platforms have 1-800 numbers where you can call these people and ask the professional a question and they'll answer it. Nowadays, especially with the internet and the resources that are available to us nowadays, it's a lot easier than it was even in the 80s and 90s.
There's this word that you see sometimes. What is a fiduciary?
So there's a legal and an ethical definition. So legal means someone who has discretion over someone else's finances, and they have certain legal obligations to manage those finances in a way that is in their best interest, the person's best interest, even if it's disadvantageous to the fiduciary themselves. So this could be an attorney, like an estate planning attorney. It could be an accountant, or it could be a financial advisor. And so that's the legal definition. So if I'm, if you roll over a 401k to me and I have it in an IRA and I'm managing it on your behalf, wealth management, I have a responsibility to manage it as what is in your best interest based on your timeline to horizon, your tolerance for volatility. So I may want to be super aggressive with it because I have a lot of confidence in the market. I'm not worried about the volatility. You got a long timeline to horizon. So I want to not put any bonds in the market and just beat all equities, which is super aggressive. But when I talk to you, you might be more conservative. You might be more of like an 80, 20, 70, 30 portfolio. So I have to put it in that because it's in your best interest. I'm compensated on the amount of money. It's called assets under management. So the more I grow it, the more money I make. So if it grows slower, it's disadvantageous to me, but it's in your best interest. And so that's kind of, in my world, that's what the fiduciary would mean. But also it could be, if you pass away and then there's a trust, then the attorney, he's in a fiduciary capacity. But then there's the ethical and moral sense of when you come to me for advice, am I giving you objective, honest advice that's in your best interest? And that's kind of a choice of an advisor. There's plenty of advisors who are kind of waver on that and might want to tell you, do this over here because I might get a commission or a fee from it versus, you could do this other option over here that would be in your best interest but wouldn't pay me as much. And so that's where the ethical part comes in.
I've heard it said before that you can't save your way into wealth. What do you think about that statement?
I think specifically they're talking about savings accounts, like a bank account. If you have enough money, you can put it wherever you want and it won't make a difference. Like if you inherit, like say $10 million, right? Well, let's say $100 million, a bunch of money. You could put it in a savings account, and pull out $10,000 a month for the rest of your life and you'll be all right. the reason they say that is because a savings account, return on a savings account, let's say a money market, might get 4% right now, 5%. The dividends and interest you get off of that get taxed. So you get the tax as income. Well, the dividends, so you get tax as income. You might be netting about a 3% return, making up numbers. So if inflation is 3% or 4%, then you're losing value on that. So for most individuals who haven't had some massive windfall, no, you can't save for retirement because you need to at least keep pace with inflation. Because $100,000 today in a 4% inflation will be like $48,000 15 years from now, and just in terms of purchasing power. That's why you need to invest for the future, which is going to get you 6, 7%, 8% rate of return. Our goal in the financial world is to try to get you at least a 7% return. That's kind of like that's the estimation number that we typically use when we're estimating future returns on an investment. The S&P has seen, I think, 9 to 10% returns going back 20 years. Just kind of give you an idea. So yeah, I think that's what and there's some truth to that. But and a lot of it has to do, like I said, just the taxable nature of a capital gain versus a dividend, which is one is taxes income, one is taxes, capital gains taxes. So I don't want to get too far down in the weeds, but there's some truth to that. Yeah.
Suppose somebody out there has saved a bit of money. They've never done anything beyond a savings account. It's slowly starting to grow. And then they're starting to think, maybe there's something more that I can do with this. But they just don't know where to start. How do they go from not knowing where to start with that little bit of money that they've saved, or, I guess that's a relative number, a little bit. They're starting to think, hey, maybe it's time to get up, so to speak. What would you say is the best thing for them to start?
In terms of like an account or where to start putting money?
They don't know where to go from here. They know, like, this money is going, but all it is a savings account.
Well, call me. I mean, that'd be a good place to start. Yeah, I'm a pretty straight shooter. I say call a professional. If you have someone in your wheelhouse, 99% of my marketing is just word of mouth. Mm-hmm. It's getting introduced. It's, through referrals. And we do all the social media and all that stuff, the SEO. Really and truly, most of my clients, especially my really good ones, just come from other introductions. There's probably someone in your circle or friend circle that your friends or someone who who's really successful, and say, what do you do? What have you done? Someone you look up to. But you can Google financial advisor in your area. Some are better than others. Quick plug for Northwestern Mutual. What brought me here is it's independent. We're not captive to any. There's no such thing as the Northwestern Mutual Fund. So that's kind of important to know that they're going to give you, no matter what you do with that person, they're still going to make money. So it kind of gives them say, okay, well, you can do this, you can do this. And versus like, if you can only do this one slice, then they're going to kind of poo-poo all the other options you have. Because this is a really good option. So you want to have someone with a kind of objective mindset. And of course, it's going to come down to anybody when you're talking to a financial advisor's trust. It's like you're gonna have that smell test. Like, this person's passed a smell test with me, and this is someone that I can build trust. And I think that's where the referrals come in, because that's the first part of trust. Is, hey, Paul recommended me, so I'm going to call this guy.
Thomas, if you could go back in time and tell the 18-year-old version of yourself some piece of financial advice, or to not do something, or to do something, what would you say to that young man?
Well, one, don't be an idiot. But I would say when I was 21, when I told you this story, I re-enlisted. I was in the military, and I got a $35,000 bonus. And I blew it. I went down to the Keys, and I hung out at Margaritaville, and I was a big Jimmy Buffett fan. I would say, go to that 21-year-old and say, okay, take your trip to the Keys, enjoy, live your life, but take a part of that and go talk to a financial professional and do something with it. Again, early and often. And you have these pops. A lot of people do. Every once in a while, my dad used to say, when I come into some money.
Right.
When you come into some money, that's an opportunity to do something with it. But we have something called the 7% rule, which means that if you invest your money in the market, this is why we use 7%. If you get a 7% rate of return on an investment, it will double every 10 years, generally speaking. If you put if you have $50,000 in the market, in 10 years, it'll be $100,000. 20 years, it'll be $200,000. In 30 years, it'll be $400,000. So that's without you adding anything to it. If you're contributing to it, it might be 3x, depending on how much you're adding to it. So that's how you build wealth. That's what I mean by time and money builds wealth. Yeah, I would go back to that, I don't know about the 18-year, but 21-year-old Tom and say, hey, buddy, go talk to, Northwestern Mutual or whoever and figure out something to do with at least part of this. 48-year-old self will thank you for it. How much it will be worth in future dollars.
If you stay plugged into the news, depending on what channel you're watching, there could be a lot of doom. Like this is over. We're headed for bad times. How do you think the average person or the person out there who's watching, how do you think you should take all of the soothsaying, let me call it, that you see in the news about the market and all these things?
How should you take it? With a grain of salt, or a shaker of salt. Yeah, your Margaritaville reference there. So it's important to just understand history and to look back. And do we think that what we're going through right now is any better or worse than 1929 or 2008? Now, I would say that what we're seeing now has little precedent. The government did do tariffs at one point, and they switched away to income tax. What we're seeing now in what the government's doing with the tariffing, and what their long-term plan is to reduce income taxes and switch over to getting revenue from tariffs, and also to hopefully, by doing so, to incentivize companies to invest in manufacturing, bring manufacturing back to America, and other things like that. So companies like Apple, that is an American company, but manufactures their cell phones overseas. And then they ship them back here to sell them to Americans. So be able to do those kind of things and understand what they're going to do. I would say just take it all with a grain of salt. Just confidence in, even if you don't have confidence in the government, fine, but have confidence in America, because America is more than just the government, right? It's me and you. The economy is a living, breathing thing. It's not controlled by Wall Street or Pennsylvania Avenue. It's going to do what it's going to do. It can be influenced by those people, but it's way more influenced by me and you in Main Street and what we do. I'm always pleasantly surprised, and I always chuckle when I hear some expert on the television or radio say, I didn't expect that to happen. Well, because you can't, there's so many things you just can't predict. So, yeah, I'll just stay calm, Something else to note is the tariffs really haven't done anything yet. They haven't done what they're going to do, good or bad. And you could argue that the tariffs are good for the economy, and that's okay. You could argue that they're bad for the economy. Valid argument. But whatever they are going to do, they haven't taken effect yet.
Right.
They haven't had a net effect yet. If they're going, S&P 500 dropped not because of anything the tariffs did, but because of the speculation of the investors in the market scared of what the tariffs might do. They sold their stocks. And then 2 days ago, somebody went and bought them all back. And so it went up 10%. And then they went down again. And I'm not even sure what they're doing right now. So this goes back to the early and often, to stay in the market. If you have some money and you see a drop like the COVID crash and you can take advantage of that, fine. But don't try to time the market. But yeah, I would, like I said, just take it all with a grain of salt and go back and remember in 1900, which sounds like a long time ago, but relatively it wasn't. The largest industry in America, probably the world, is whaling, because we needed whale oil. The most common cause of death in women was childbirth. And so just think of where we are. You're taking a hot shower. Didn't even exist.
Right.
I take one every day. So I can pick up my cell phone and call my mother-in-law who lives in India right now. And, in the 1980s, it was not even possible. And with your phone attached to the wall, you had to sit there. And so just try to understand of where we are relative to history, and know that, okay, I think we'll be all right. 40 years from now, someone will be writing a book about this, maybe, or talking about it on a podcast.
Exactly. Tom, do you think America is an exceptional place?
Yes.
Why?
Because I've been to other places. I've traveled all over the world, just through the military and everywhere else. Yeah, I mean, we hear 100 times over that it's a nation of immigrants. It's a nation of ideals, and there are people being born. There are Americans being born today in other countries who don't know they're Americans yet. They may not have an American passport, but they're American because of the way they think and the way they feel. And that's what made America America, is people who came here and they all said, you know what, I don't want to live by tyranny. I don't want to live, I want to have, freedom and liberty to live my life. Doesn't mean that everything's going to work out the way I want, but I want that opportunity. And this has just been one big experiment that continues. Like, some things turn out to be good and not so much. Then we move things back. In the 1990s, car companies thought it'd be a great idea to have those automatic seat belts. Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
And then people got trapped in their cars in car accidents and said, no, that's not a good idea. Let's reverse that. So now those went away. So we're constantly working out the kinks in America of what's better or worse. But right now in England, you can go to jail for misgendering somebody. Jail.
Yeah.
Right? Which you could argue that's mean or, transphobic or whatever. Okay, that's fine. But should it be illegal? I don't know. I don't think so. It should be illegal to call me, an asshole. So we live in a place that isn't by any means perfect. Maybe people say, oh, it's not exceptional. Maybe confusing the words perfect with exceptional.
Right.
But what makes us exceptional is understanding our imperfection, and particularly with our Constitution, recognizes that of being an elastic document that you can add to it, and as we've seen, sometimes take away. Or at one point we thought prohibition's a good idea. Yeah, that's not such a good idea. Let's take that away. To me, like I said, I've been all over the world, and I haven't seen a place that's quite like America.
So how can the people out there get a hold of you?
Well, on the web, of course, thomasperez.nm.com. Of course, you can give me a phone call, 843-469-0806. That rings my cell phone right here. I pride myself in being able to be contacted by my clients on my cell phone. So they don't call my staff or my team. I've kind of flipped the script, so to speak. A lot of times when you call a financial advisor, you talk to their person, and then you got to somehow reach your advisor. My team supports me, so I delegate to them. My clients, I manage their wealth. They depend on me, so they call me, and then I can delegate down to somebody else if I need that. So that's how you can get a hold of me. Of course, an email. But if you get on my website, there's a little button there that will get you to my scheduler. You can schedule time on me or just call me.
All right. Well, this isn't limited to finance.
Yeah.
It's a very big question.
Okay.
An ocean question. In closing, for anybody out there who's tuned in with us, what would you say to that person?
It's been my observation that not just in finance, but in most decisions, we make these decisions on a spectrum between logic and emotion. And on the logical side of the spectrum, it's the math and the numbers, the science. You think things through. And then on the emotional side, it helps me sleep at night and feel good. And when I'm meeting with somebody, it's not my job to judge where they are on that spectrum, just to understand where they are and meet them there. Now, sometimes if someone is making a bad decision, and I recognize that, I got to sleep well at night too, so I might need to hit them in the feels a little bit. They're being too logical, or slap them in the face with the numbers that they're being too emotional about the decision. But when you're making a decision, financial or otherwise, just maybe do some introspection, like how am I feeling about this decision? I would argue most people probably use their emotions to make decisions, but then they'll use a certain amount of logic to back it up. Maybe it's the logic, the math that makes me feel good. It gives me that confidence. Yeah, I just kind of get to know yourself and try to understand like how you make decisions, and maybe there's some personal growth in there to be able to make better decisions.
Well, Thomas Perez, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you.
Great pleasure.
It's been I love this. This is great. Thank you.
All right, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next.
The Paul Leslie Hour is made possible by people like you. listeners, viewers, please go to thepaulleslie.com/support, and you'll know what to do when you're there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone who contributes. Performance of The Entertainer intro song by John Primorano. And of course, this is your announcer speaking. See you next time on the Paul Leslie Hour.